Fantasy Free Me. This is the podcast for writers, readers, publishers, and advocates for queer and progressive and transgressive fantasy fiction. I'm your host, A.R. Marsh, and I'm an author too. I'm an author of the 4-volume set, a series of the Guild of Ornamental Hermits. So welcome and thanks for being here. I think we're going to have a great show. Okay. All right. Well, welcome everybody. And I hope there's some everybody's out there that want to listen to this because this is going to be a great podcast. I can tell you already. This is Fantasy Free Me. And it's a podcast that's focusing basically on queer and progressive literature, mainly fantasy fiction, of course. The little science fiction may come into it from time to time. And the writers, the readers, the publishers, the people who advocate for it. You know, there's a lot going on with regard to censorship and other things, or writers just struggling to be heard in a very large and increasingly complicated technologically and otherwise marketplace. So I have with me here today, and I'm very honored, and thank you, Catherine Lundoff, who is the publisher and owner of Queen of Swords Press and an author. And when I looked at your list of articles, for example, in short fiction, it's like, what, 35 short fiction on your list, and that was just selected items. And then, 29, I counted 29 articles, nonfiction, and plus all the books and the books that you've edited as well as written yourself. So I'm really happy to have you here. And I want to find out why you do what you do and how it is when you do it. Those are my big questions.
Okay. Well, I started writing a number of years ago, and the stuff that's missing from my website is that I originally started out primarily writing erotica, and I wrote a ton of short fiction, and that was before the glorious days of search engines, and I spun up a pseudonym and kind of transitioned everything over to the pseudonym, and then the market sort of drifted, and that was the end of that. So there's stuff on there that I need to update eventually because there's like, X amount of stuff that was written under the other name. So I got started writing in my early 30s, in part because my late wife suggested it to me and encouraged me to do it. I was in law school. I discovered that misery made me telekinetic. I would walk into the kitchen and things would slide off the countertops and stuff.
Oh my God.
And in the midst of all of this, my wife said, "Why don't you try writing a book? I think you'd do great at writing a book." So I started working on a nonfiction project and then kind of fell into fiction, started selling things, had things accepted. And so I had a number of years where I was published by a number of other small and medium-sized presses. And I, worked with that for a while and ran into some issues with, one or two of the presses that I was published by. And I believe my exact phrase when I started contemplating starting Queen of Swords Press was, "I cannot be more dysfunctional than some of the people I've been working with." And, we try. We set the bar. So I spun up Queen of Swords Press about 9.5 years ago. That was a 2-year process. And I did it for a variety of reasons. Some of it was wanting to publish, my own writing, but also to publish things that I wasn't seeing a lot of out in the genre. And so I was, aiming for, quirky and unique voices that were interesting, but still within the scope of standard storytelling. I'm not much of a reader of experimental work. I respect it. I think it's great that it's out there, but it's not my thing. So I started from there, and I, began, bringing other authors on, and have been, working with a variety of other authors since then. We're pretty much a boutique house. It's based on, things I like because the buck stops with me and I'm ultimately responsible for it. And so I'm the one who's out selling things. So I have to be very excited about stuff for a long period of time. But I've also continued doing my own writing as well. So I'm best known for a duology of books about menopausal werewolves.
I think that's wonderful. I saw that. Say more, please.
I wanted to write something, and this came about, some years back. I wanted to write something about, middle-aged and older women as heroes.
Mhm.
And when I started working on this project originally, it was like 2011, there wasn't really very much out there. There's not a huge amount now, but there's a lot more than there was. Like you run out of fingers and toes, so that's good. That's progress. um, and so I was looking at options, and I was invited to write for an anthology of werewolf stories. And I was looking at, the available, and it had to be, it had to be lesbian and sapphic werewolves. And so I was looking at the options out there. And like, okay, everything is weighted really heavily toward young women getting turned at first menses is a
Mm,
really popular motif.
mhm.
And I thought, well, and poking around some more, I sort of stumbled into the wilds of some medical website online, Health MD or something of that ilk. And it was talking about the symptoms of menopause, which included things like mood swings, unexpected hair growth, longer teeth, because your gums recede. And I'm
Right.
like, you know what that sounds like? And that's the idea of menopausal werewolves was born. So far that's generated one novella and two novels. I'm working on the third novel. I'm hoping to have it out this year. Last year for that and my accumulated other work, I won an Alice B. Readers Award, which is a juried award given for achievement in writing sapphic and lesbian characters.
Uh-huh.
And very excited about this. And, you know,
Congratulations. Yeah.
thank you. And little known authors like Dorothy Allison and, Joanna Russ and people like that have won it in the past. So I was just like, and
Wow. Wow.
me.
That's incredible. I'm
So
going to have
yeah,
to read these werewolf books. I just found out about them researching, and it sounds wonderful. Uh, I'm not, this is not to flog my books, but in my four novel fantasy series, which is really queer saturated in all kinds of ways, but it's all based on midlife magic, people having their first magic adventures when they're over
okay.
45, 50 on into their 70s. So I think there's really something to be said for magical fantasy, science fiction that is not just for young people. So
Yes,
anyway, just wanted
yes.
to check that. So, and it's fun to write about that sort of thing because you have uh, characters who are already going through such major changes in their lives. And then when you toss in something magical or werewolves or something, it just makes it all worse or better. I'm not sure, maybe a
Or
little.
better.
Yeah. Anyway, yes. So please say more about what you're doing and why you're
So
doing
yeah,
it.
so I've been working on that, and I also kicked off a big bibliography project on older women specifically in speculative fiction. So, if your work's qualified, it's out on Goodreads. I'll send you a link to it, and you can, add it to the show information if you want to.
Oh,
Um,
I would
some
love to.
fans took it over and kind of ran with it, so I don't have any control over the ultimate product right now. But it's an interesting reading list, and there's some cool things
I'd
on it.
love to see it,
Okay.
definitely. So yes,
Okay.
please.
So I do that. We publish, a few books a year. We publish work by Melissa Scott and AJ Fitzwater, who's an author from New Zealand. Most recently, we published a queer author from Singapore named Joyce Ching. We published a vampire novel by M. Christian, who's
Yeah, so
somebody that we know in common.
mhm.
Um, and and I don't know if you saw any of my posts about that, but Chris's book Running Dry is a semifinalist for a horror award right now.
And
So we're
that's
waiting to find
wonderful.
if it makes next level.
Yeah.
So very excited about that. Um, let's see, what else do I do? I work part time at Dreamhaven Books. I live in Minneapolis. So if you've seen the pictures of the older man emerging from the cloud of tear gas screaming at ice, I work
Mhm.
for him.
Oh, wow.
So
Oh
I
my
started
God.
there about a week before Greg became a folk hero, and that's been really exciting.
Wow.
um, So I'm spending a lot of time, publishing. I teach writing classes at the local literary center and other venues. I write, I edit. I edited a couple of anthologies. I'm coming off a couple of years where my wife developed early onset dementia and
I'm
got
sorry.
very sick very quickly. So I've been juggling caregiving around other things, and she passed away at the beginning of last year. So I'm kind of getting back into the rhythm of my own writing again because I, was pretty slow there for a while. It was kind of a piece a year for a couple of years. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm expecting to have some new short fiction out soon. And the articles, as you've mentioned, most recently I wrote about a really interesting story for a blog called Deep Cuts in a Lovecraftian Vein, which is a scholarly blog on weird fiction. Some of it's Lovecraft related, some of it's related to Robert Howard and earlier science fiction, but also, modern interpretations of some of that.
Mhm.
And the story that I wrote the piece on was a story by an author named Margaret St. Clair. It's called Roberta. And it is, as the kids say, problematic AF. But as near as we can tell, it is also the first representation of a medical transition of a character moving from male to female.
Oh, wow.
So it's not magic. It's not, weird genome things. It's actually a medical transition with a reference to hormones and so forth. That said, it's not what you would call progressive, but it's there. So it's an interesting historical artifact. So that's the most recent thing that I've written for. I'm working on an essay on reading Joanna Russ again, reading her short fiction again, what it's like to come back and look at the things after, years of your own writing and see things that you didn't see before, either because you read them before you started writing or because some of her stuff is complex enough. You just have to keep going back to it before you really get a full picture of what she was trying to do. So that'll be out this fall. And yeah, I'm working on things like that. I've also edited or co-edited a couple of anthologies. I've written for the World of Darkness franchise, including I've written for Vampire the Masquerade and Wraith, as well as the in-game scenarios for Ghost Hunter.
Mhm.
So that was a really fun, challenging thing that came up a couple of years ago that I got to try out. And I'm hoping to do more of that. Hoping to get a chance to do some more gaming related writing because it's really interesting to go play in somebody else's world for a little while.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. That is interesting. And uh, this whole thing for me of we're building worlds as writers, and especially a lot of times ones we either really want to live in or ones we really don't want to live in, but somebody's, trying to make a difference. And and I don't know what it would be like to try to exist as a writer within somebody else's construct. And I think the closest I came to that was when I fell in love with Emma Bull's writing. And of course, she set War for the Oaks in Minneapolis, which is my only connection with the place. But when I saw that you were from there, it's like, yeah, yes, Hennepin Avenue, or if I'm probably even mispronouncing it, but it's
Nope, nope.
the only reference here. But that I
Yeah.
guess we had a lot of writers that all sort of played in that borderlands, border town
Mm-hmm.
type
Yep.
construction,
Yep.
which I really like.
Yeah. War for the Oaks was actually how we ended up living here.
Really? Okay. Okay.
Well, my wife and I were of course not married at that point, but we're living in Iowa, and I had my ill-fated path through law school, and I was for a time running a small bookstore, and my wife is wrapping up her program, and we were looking at places to move to that had vibrant arts communities and were an easy enough move away that we could commute back and forth on weekends hauling things and all of that kind of good stuff, and where we knew a few people. And so we looked at Chicago, we looked at St. Louis, and we looked at Minneapolis. And I just really like Minneapolis all the way because I wanted to live somewhere where somebody could write about it that way.
Right.
I mean, it's a great piece of hometown fiction. It really is. And very much a love song to the city in the 1980s. As a matter of fact, Queen of Swords Press published a different book by another local author, Michael Merriam, called Last Car to Anoon Station, which is set in Minneapolis in 2007.
Oh, wow.
And so it's Welsh mythology meets Uptown. They travel around by the ghosts of the old streetcar system. They're pursued by the hounds of a noon, and so it's very, very, very atmospheric with lots of local color. And so
I
I just thought
actually
it we come full circle on these things.
yeah, yeah. I'm sorry I interrupted there for a minute, but I just love it when there's a really strong sense of place, geography, city,
Mm-hmm.
uh, where you really do get the atmosphere so well that you can almost taste it. And for me, War for the Oaks was one of those, oh, I can almost taste those places. Um, yeah, great, great, great fun book. I revisit it from time to time. Uh, yeah, well, that's cool. Uh, did you ever spend time in San Francisco Bay Area?
Mm-hmm.
Just where
Yeah,
I know,
I've been out a few times.
yeah, yeah. We mentioned our mutual friend, late friend, M. Christian, it's his writing name. And I think he really got his start as a writer, even though he'd been writing quite a lot as a little kid. I mean, apparently very diligently from a very young age, just determined to be a writer. But San Francisco seems to where he started to really come into his own and being part of the scene that was there at the time. And
Yeah.
writing
Yeah,
the too. Yeah.
yeah. Chris was one of my former editors when I was still writing erotica, so we kind of both went full circle on that, getting
Wow.
to publish their book. You know, so, yeah.
Oh, that's really great. What are you noticing happening now for either the authors that you publish or authors that you know or know of, especially who are queer authors or writing about queer characters in a progressive way? Uh, it seems to me from the tiny little place where I sit that things are not so great, and that there's obviously a lot of censorship that we're aware of. But it also seems like, I don't know, is Amazon really getting rid of people's stuff in a almost purposeful way? It seems like that sometimes. I don't know, maybe you don't
Yes.
want to comment, but
Oh, well, I've talked about it on Blue Sky. I'm certainly willing to talk to you
yeah,
about it.
okay.
So, I mean, our books are geared, toward adults. We have, a couple of YA friendly titles. We have, one book that I would say is a great all ages title, and we're not getting hit by a lot of the more active censorship simply because we're not selling books to school age people as a rule, with the one exception. Um, and so that part isn't hitting us as much. The overall environment is certainly, doing some serious damage. I believe that Amazon delisted a bunch of our titles in May and April because our sales just went like this, and at a far greater speed than could be accounted for by either the economy or any failures at publicity on our parts. So we had a really bad couple of months there where sales were less than half of what they have been for the last few years. Um, and, I go out and I do a lot of in-person tables and so forth, and I talk to a lot of people. So I've got an idea of, the point at which there is no money for books right now, versus they just can't see them. And I think that was, they just can't see them. It's mysteriously stopped happening with such frequency in June, and now things are going back up to where they were before. A number of years ago, when Amazon did what I refer to as the Great Delisting, where they targeted most of the queer and all the erotic titles, I got hit with that one, and they delisted everything that I had. So I knew what it looked like. And so I was watching for that, and I watched it do, I'm like, yeah, no, that's not normal. That's not, that can't be accounted for by the things that are going on. Mind you, the things that are going on are not great. So we're running into things like, there's a lot of talk right now about, people reading less. And I think to some extent that's true. I think they also are reading in different formats. So it's kind of critical to keep stuff out in ebook and so forth if you can. But, with that, it's also things like, we go and we sell books at Prides, for example, and, we're running into a mix of things where the Prides are feeling more threatened because they're losing sponsorship from, large corporate organizations. And which, for all the singing and dancing about it, the fact of the matter is that, because I've been out for a long time, a really long time. I came out in 1986, and I remember what things used to look like. And so, okay, sorry, just gotta, my screen just lit up with this meeting is being recorded, and I was just making sure it wasn't an error message or anything. So the thing about it is, it's not that, corporate prides necessarily need to be a goal, but what they do bring is safety and stability to the organizations, as well as a level of visibility to our communities that in some respects makes us, to one degree or another, somewhat safer.
Yeah.
Because it also means that they're committing to treating their queer employees better. It means that, they're putting, an effort into working with our communities. Mm-hmm. So Target's abrupt flip on, suddenly declaring that they no longer cared about queer rights and that they no longer cared about people of color after this big performative thing in Minneapolis, where they're based. Yes. So they put, all this money into this, and then, by this year, they were using their parking lots for staging for ICE. They were letting ICE stage in their parking lots. They let ICE hunt in their stores for their own employees.
Oh my God.
People were dragged out of different Target stores here who were citizens and employees, and Target did absolutely nothing.
Oh my God. I had not heard about it. I stopped shopping with them when they quit their...
But they're, because they're here in town, the headquarters are here, we all pay a lot of attention. And so losing things like that is, it's a significant financial loss to the organization, which means it has to be made up elsewhere. Mm-hmm. Or things have to shrink in size. Yeah. And I think that a lot of the people who talk a great deal about, corporate pride also have never been to the smaller prides, and they don't know what that looks like. They don't know what it looks like when you get a whole bunch of, white dude thugs with a bullhorn showing up, screaming at people and threatening them. A lot of the stuff that goes on at the small, because we do a lot of like the small town prides and so forth. And, there's stuff that goes on out there that we don't see in the big cities yet, or we see on like a much reduced scale. And the fact that, corporations like Target are making it socially acceptable for those people to be out and about because they've cut us loose, mm-hmm. does not do our community any favors.
No, not at all.
And I say this as somebody who's not a fan of Target, but realistically, I'm using them as an example because I'm here and they've done really crappy things to us here. So, it stands out a lot. So I'm seeing things like that. I'm seeing, at the same time, I'm seeing, for example, we did Pride in Rochester, which is a city, about an hour and a half south of Minneapolis, St. Paul. And we did it in May. So it was at the tail end of the big, I call it the invasion, but Metro surge. Mm-hmm. And there were so many people. I mean, it was huge. It was really supportive. A lot of the churches came out. So I'm seeing a lot more of that. I'm seeing a lot more of the smaller prides working together, to pull things off. They're tabling at each other's events. They're exchanging information. They're networking. So I'm seeing things like that happen as well. And just also, just a diversity of community who's showing up, in a way that was not visible a few years ago. We do St. Cloud Pride, and St. Cloud Pride is another hour and a half north of the cities. And it's pretty much in MAGA country. And, I've worked the table there where I've, sold books to Muslim immigrants. I've sold books to Latino immigrants. I've sold books to, all the people that we assume aren't going to be interested in our books, and they're there and they're showing up and they're talking to us and there's a connection. And, I've had some lovely chats with people at church booths in the last few years. Even if I didn't have to go look them up afterwards and go, what is this?
That's hopeful. That's good. Yeah.
So yes, I think there's things like that are changing and improving. And I think, I mean, on the ground for us here in Minnesota, we've just gotten a whole lot of national acclaim about, basically people pulling together,
Mm, yeah.
and I think that, you know, I moved here in '97, and it was a very different environment. It was very cliquish, like people who'd been born here, had all the friends they were ever going to make. They made them in high school. They're done now. And it was much harder to break in socially. It was harder to find jobs. It was harder to network. It was harder to find people, and that has really changed in the last few years. So like I know most of my neighbors. We all do a certain amount of stuff together. We are all engaged in some level of mutual aid. It's things that didn't exist here before exist now. And I think that is to some extent also true within the queer communities.
Yeah. Yeah. It's nice to hear about uh, cities other than the West Coast, which,
Mm-hmm.
California came to Oregon, Eugene, then Portland now. Eugene, where as you were talking about the people showing up with, guns and harassing people, there was an instance in Eugene a couple of years ago where the local goth slash queer club uh, was being terrorized literally by, a couple of hundred people with guns. And the police in Eugene did not do anything about it. And the club continued to be vandalized and people threatened, and nobody did a thing. And this was little Eugene, which has got a reputation as a, hippie town. And it's got the
Mm-hmm.
university there too. But there's also other folks coming in from elsewhere or who are,
Yeah. Didn't
just,
Eugene just have to cancel their Pride March? They didn't cancel Pride, I thought, but they
oh, I
did
don't
cancel the
know.
march. I thought I saw that, but maybe I'm.
Yeah, I was up here in Portland by then, so I don't know. I'll
Yeah.
have to go back and check.
Yeah, and I might have the details wrong. So the other thing I haven't talked about much is AI, and that also has, just a huge impact in terms of, you know, we are Queerest Press is an all human, all the time shop.
Mhm.
Our artists are humans, our writers are humans. Everybody is writing their own thing. Everybody is creating their own thing. We don't use AI tools for anything to the extent that we can possibly avoid them. You know, um, there's some software, or obviously things have been so enmeshed, you can't necessarily say we're 100% have never used it, but we do our best. Um, but that has had a big impact as well, because you've got, this influx of AI manuscripts. So at this point, I don't open up for open submissions anymore. I
Mhm.
either do invitations, or we go through something called small pitch, which is geared towards small press publishers. And, the writers have to sign something that says that they're not using AI, and they do screening, and you get, a sortable database where you can go through and pick the manuscripts you think you might want to see. So I've been doing that for the last year or so on picking things. Um,
That makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, because I mean, the press is me, and I have a part-time assistant, and then I have, people who are in and out on a contractual basis, like my artists and designers and so forth. And I can only track so much. And so I'm just not going to be able to tackle, a couple of hundred AI generated manuscripts in a week or something. And I've heard horror stories from other people, so I know that's happening. So yeah, so we try to, work through that. But I mean, part of the thing, the damage that it's doing, in addition to the environmental damage, in addition to the social damage, the political damage, it's also impacting things like writing, to the extent that there's markets and there's opportunities that were open before that are closing up in a way that they were not before, because people just can't handle it. They can't cope with it. They don't want it. And so what it's doing is it's ruining some of those opportunities for everyone. And I think that that's something that, particularly new writers who are tempted by the, everybody uses this now routine, need to really spend some time with, because it's like, if the damage sheet is this long, then guess what?
Yeah.
Who's going to take your work? And you need to think about, is this, are you writing for an audience? Are you trying to get this published? Are you trying to get, something out there? So that's kind of an ongoing thing. And, supposedly some of the changes in Amazon's algorithm of recent date are to begin to screen some of that stuff out, where they're trying to cut down on the amount of things. But it's like, well, but you let it proliferate in the first place. So now.
Yeah, I mean, I know you have
um,
to, when you're publishing through Kindle, I do my nonfiction books, publish them myself, but you have to say, is there AI content here? And, have a disclaimer of some kind. Yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe too little, too late.
We'll see. I mean, right now, I'm not, seeing or hearing any great, you know, improvements in that arena, and it's an ongoing problem. But yeah, so I mean, for us, it's been a combination of personal issues and decisions around dealing with AI generated work that I'm like, yeah, no, we can't. We're gonna, if these lovely people are gonna pre-screen manuscripts for us, we're going over there.
And it's great that you're bringing this up, because I was going to, ask about the impact of AI. And it seems to be like there's this putting people in a hard place sometimes. For example, when I was writing for Future of Sex, which was something Chris got me into doing, he was the managing editor there. We were supposed to supply images for the articles, but we weren't given budgets for artwork. So I looked at the stock photos and thought, well, these aren't really interesting. I went ahead and I used AI images for most of the articles I published, just because they were free and I could do them myself. And I was writing about AI and human intimacy at the time. Got 2 nonfiction books on that topic. So, and gradually learning more and more about the water usage, the energy usage, the data centers going down in rural areas, destroying farmland, as well as, of course, all the copyright and
impact on cognitive decline. I mean, there's all kinds of
stuff. AI psychosis, you name it. So it's hard if you're a small person or a doing it all yourself person. Mm-hmm. How many resources do you have, and are you forced to, by circumstances, or maybe you think you have to because you can't draw it yourself, use generative AI for images, for examples? So, and then I can say I'm part of the backlash now, even though, I've had to use this stuff, not for writing, but for images. But I think there's times where I still have to.
I mean, there are other options, but it's like you have to be working with a human artist who knows what the options are. Mm-hmm. So there's Creative Commons, and there's a couple other things that take a really hardcore. Yeah, and they've been awesome, and taking the heat on. We're just not going to have these out there. Mm. And that I think does make a difference. But yes, it is challenging. Yeah. But yeah, I made a choice early on that we were gonna, and I started obviously because before all of this became a thing, that I was gonna come up with the money to pay my artists and pay my writers and my designer and so forth. So
wife also designed books, was an artist. Did I get that
Not
right?
Our books. Yes, she was. She did hand bookbinding. And she did, she made paper, she did printmaking. So she did a lot of things, but she was creating either artist books or bespoke books for clients. Mm-hmm. So it's a different, medium. We always talked about it. It just never happened. And then when she got sick, it was not an option. So most of our books are designed by a lovely, lovely person who I know who's local and is one of the suburbs of the metro area, who, interestingly enough, I have never met in person. We keep talking about it. It keeps not working out. Wow. Been working with her for years now. She's great.
Yeah. This time is going by so fast, and it's wonderful. And probably if we had all the time in the world, we could probably talk longer. And I hope at some point we do talk at another time. But what is it that you think it's important for aspiring writers in particular aspiring queer writers do you have any words of wisdom for what they should be paying attention to or avoiding, anything from your view as a publisher and as a writer?
I think that chasing trends is not a great idea, because I think that one of the things that happens, especially if you're trying for, one of the big publishers, it takes so long for a manuscript to get through that system that by the time the trend you're chasing, is long gone by then. So I'd say, write the story that you really want to write the story that you're enthusiastic about. Ultimately, no matter what you end up doing with it, you will be the person who is talking it up the most. You will be the person who's your own best advocate. Unless you have like a mom or, a dad is very excited about it. But in general, for most of us, so I would say, you write the thing that you're passionate about, write the thing that you want to have be, important to you for a while.
Yeah.
For example, I mean, our contracts right now are for 5 years. So I have to be able to look at somebody's work and go, can I visualize myself sitting behind a table with this in front of me at 5 years and still going, you might want to read this with exactly the same level of enthusiasm that I have about this brand new shiny thing, and if I can't sell something, I don't take it, because that does a disservice to everyone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'd say, passion is such a big and sometimes underrated part of writing. I've written a lot of things that I enjoyed writing, but I wasn't necessarily passionate about. And what I'm finding as I move toward my crone years, is that what people are very excited about with my work is the werewolf books. People come looking for me for those. People are like, every book table somebody comes up and they're like, is there a third book yet? So it's been going on for years, so it's people get very attached to the characters, and it's because I was passionate about it. I am passionate about it, and it's sort of a home. It's sort of a fictional home for me, and I think that counts for a lot, and that's something that I think there are writers who could be passionate about multiple series and still make it work. I don't know yet if I'm one of them right now. I just need to finish another werewolf book.
Well, you grow attached to characters, or I think a lot of us do. And I don't know, I always feel like I'm just chasing after mine with the laptop. It's like, you're doing what? Okay. We'll go with that. Somebody told me I was a pantser, but I don't even think I'm a seat of the pants writer so much as I'm a chasing after writer. We all have our ways of doing things. Chris was great for plots. He could just imagine, a million plots a day probably. And we would talk like, I can't do that thing that you're doing. And he'd be like, well, I don't quite do characters the way you do. And that's fun too, when we get to talk with each other and find out, what our creative process is and where's it taking us. So yeah. Anything else that people should know about how to get in contact with you? Besides I'll be posting your own website and your Queen of Swords Press website, but is there any other contact information that you want me to put up in the show notes and embed in the video here?
You can add we're also on Blue Sky and TikTok and Instagram as QOS Press. And then I personally am also out on Mastodon, and that's usually on a Wandering Shop, is the name of the server, and that's where I tend to put more, my more personal stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, if you're more interested in the press, that we have a lot of open format things where we're out there. Me personally, you get kind of a mix of what I'm doing and what I'm working on, and the press, because it's a big part of that.
Well, this is great. I am, again, I think I've said it several times, I'm really happy to meet you. It's been great to talk.
Oh, good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was great meeting you too.
Have a good rest of the day.